Multiple alleles. Multiple alleles. So an example of multiple alleles would be blood group in humans. We'll get to another example later, but this is our first one. So multiple alleles in blood groups mean that many different alleles will control what type of blood we have. Some forms of inheritance are determined by more than two alleles, referred to as multiple alleles. The ABO group has three forms of alleles, sometimes called AB markers. They produce antigens on your blood cells, and those antigens can be either A antigens, B antigens, or your red blood cell can have neither of those antigens and be called type O blood. They represent this by a few different genotypes here. So like blood type A is represented by capital I and superscript capital A. Blood type AB is represented by capital I, capital A superscript, capital I, capital B superscript. And if I said subscript over here, I apologize, that should be superscript. These are superscripts. B blood would be represented by capital I, superscript capital B, and type O blood is recessive, and so it would be represented by little I, little I. And more of this will be on your Amoeba Sisters video. So this, I marked out some of it because it was something that was mentioned twice. Human blood type, again, there's three possible alleles. You'll watch your Amoeba Sisters video over this, which will again point out that type A blood, it is represented by a capital I and capital A. Now, if a person is homozygous dominant for that, then they are going to be capital I, capital A, capital I, capital A. If they are heterozygous for that, then they'll be capital I, capital A, and then a lowercase I to represent that they are carriers for the type O. Type B blood can either be homozygous dominant, IB, IB, or heterozygous, IB, little I. An AB blood person would have the genotype IAIB. That's the only possible genotype for AB blood because they have to have one of the dominant A's and one of the dominant B's. So type O blood has to be little I. That's the only genotype possible for that because it has to have the recessive genotype in order for it to express that phenotype. A person with AB blood marries a person who is heterozygous for A blood. Lists the genotype and phenotype ratios of their children. So we have the person with type AB blood represented as IAIB. So that's one of the parents. The other parent is supposed to be heterozygous for A blood, which means they have to have capital I, capital A, or they wouldn't have A blood. But since they're heterozygous, they're also carrying the lowercase I. So let's see what happens when we fill in this Punnett square. One of the squares will be IAIA, so that person would be homozygous dominant for type A blood. This square would be IAIB, which means this person would have type AB blood because they have A antigen and they have B antigen. Over here, we would have somebody that's heterozygous for type A blood because they have IA, which gives them the type A blood, but they're also a carrier for O blood. And this individual, this possibility would have IB for B blood and be a carrier of O blood. So a person that's AB blood, if they are married to a person who has A blood but is a carrier, these people potentially could have lots of different blood types for their children. The only thing they couldn't have would be O blood. So genotypic ratio, then you have one IAIA to one IA little I to one IAIB to one IB little I. The phenotypic ratio would be 2 A blood. These two would show up A blood. 1 AB, so that's this one, and 1 B blood, which is that one. We can also use multiple alleles in rabbits. This produces a hierarchy of dominance. In other words, there's several different alleles there, and there's one that's the most dominant, and then there's the next dominant, and the next after that, and finally the one that is recessive completely. So in rabbits, 4 alleles code for coat color. Capital C is going to represent our brown fur color. CCH represents chinchilla color, which is a gray. CH is Himalayan, which is the white and black. And little c is albino. So the only capital C is the brown color because it's the most dominant. And then these would all be recessive to that brown. But CCH, lowercase c, CH is dominant to Himalayan, which is CH. Himalayan is dominant to albino, which is C. So that's your hierarchy of dominance then. Brown, then chinchilla, then Himalayan, and then albino. The presence of multiple alleles increases the possible number of genotypes and phenotypes. So phenotypes then, instead of having just 2, now we can have 4. Possible genotypes, for brown alone, you have 4 possible genotypes. For chinchilla, you have 3. For Himalayan, 2. And for albino, you just have 1, because it has to be lowercase c to be albino. Again, so brown is dominant over all the others. Chinchilla is recessive to brown, but dominant over Himalayan and albino. Himalayan is recessive to brown and chinchilla, but dominant over albino. And albino is recessive to everything else. So, solve this problem. A Himalayan rabbit who also carries the albino allele. So here's your Himalayan rabbit, CH, and your albino is C, is mated to a chinchilla rabbit, CCH, who carries the Himalayan allele, CH. What phenotypes might be present in the offspring? So when we run this Punnett square, the CCH and CH are here because CCH is on the side, CH is at the top, so that gives this possibility. And then for this square, you have CCH and C. This one you have CHCH, and this one CHC. So you have several genotypes here, but the phenotypes are just chinchilla and Himalayan, because Himalayan has to have CH and then something else, either another CH or a CC. Then the chinchilla has to have a CCH, and it can be CCH CH, or it can be CCH C. Either one would work.